what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, Hadi Choopan actually making some news today with an interesting post on Instagram where he's effectively calling out the Olympia judges. Now, Hadi has been no stranger to expressing his disdain with the decision at the Olympia. You guys remember the infamous moment where he took the medal off and walked off stage? That was a really big talking point when he lost his Olympia title to Derek Lunsford last year. And it seems like this year he was also not happy with the result, even though, you know, when you watch Samson get awarded the Sandow Trophy, Hadi's immediate facial expression doesn't look like he's very happy with the result, but he is charitable when he's, you know, congratulating Samson on stage. So he didn't really show too much visible disappointment with the result. He congratulated Samson. I believe he also left a comment on one of Samson's Instagram pictures and made a post of his own congratulating Samson. So up until this point, at least for this year's Olympia result, Hadi has been relatively quiet about being disappointed with the outcome. And obviously, he's a bodybuilder. He's a competitor. He wanted to win. Of course, he didn't want to get second place. That's understandable. But this latest Physique update had the caption, "I am cut harder than a diamond, just as I cut my path like a diamond. The truths that the judges denied." And then if you translate the portion below that, it says the facts that the judges omitted, with that little emoji with the guy with the hand over his face. So the way that I kind of interpreted this was Hadi is talking about his conditioning. He's saying that he was the most conditioned guy on stage, and the judges either ignored that or it didn't matter to them, or at least didn't factor it in when they made their decision for the result of Samson winning. Now, I honestly don't think that anybody would argue that Hadi was still the most conditioned bodybuilder on stage at the Olympia. He was definitely more conditioned than Samson and definitely more conditioned than Derek. But I think that's not really the issue here. I think the question is really, is the standard shifting away from being so conditioning oriented and being more with a guy like Samson, who is not the most conditioned guy on stage, but he was really big, he's very aesthetic, he's got a great physique, and still, even though he won the Olympia, I still don't think most people would say that Samson was the most conditioned guy on stage, because he just wasn't. So that's really what Hadi is calling into question here, is why didn't his conditioning matter, or at least he feels like it wasn't factored in. And I think they're just kind of moving away from that being so important. Obviously, condition is always going to be important. I'm not saying it's not something they're judged on. It obviously is. But it seems like with the Samson victory, and even with the Derek victory last year, it doesn't seem like it's as important as aesthetics. Because obviously last year, that was also a big talking point, that Derek wasn't as conditioned as Hadi from the front, especially in the striations in the chest, the detail in the arms. But then from the back, Derek was pretty well conditioned, but then also brought a very aesthetic, crazy V-taper, all that stuff. So conditioning wasn't as important last year either. And Hadi doesn't seem to be happy with the fact that that seems to be the direction that the judging is moving towards. So I think the question for you guys, and really just for us in general as bodybuilding fans, is, do you like the direction that bodybuilding seems to be headed? I do think that Samson winning the Olympia was kind of a statement from the judges that this is the type of physique that we're looking for now. Well, that definitely was the statement, but the fact that he wasn't the most conditioned guy on stage, but was big and aesthetic, I think was more so the statement. I think Samson winning certainly had that implication that we're not placing as big of a focus on conditioning with this decision and having Samson be the new standard for the Olympia. So if that is the direction they're moving, the question is, do you as a bodybuilding fan like that direction? And personally, I do. Like I said, it's not saying they don't want the guys to be in shape. It's saying they're focusing more on the flow of the physique, the aesthetics of the physique, and just a beautiful overall package. And if you have that package, conditioning is a little bit lower on the list, I guess would be a good way of putting it. Because I think you could argue if conditioning was really high on that list of what's most important in bodybuilding, then Hadi probably would have won. If conditioning was at the top of that list, Hady was the most conditioned guy. And I also kind of wonder how much of it, too, is maybe Hady's fans getting in his ear a little bit and shifting his attitude. Because definitely, I'm sure you guys have seen the comment sections of all the Olympia stuff. There's a ton of Hadi Choopan fans saying that Hady should have won. And while he didn't look that annoyed on stage, he was very gracious on stage, I felt. It seems like his attitude kind of soured after the Olympia. And I'm wondering if a lot of those fan comments got to his head and really reinforced in his mind that he should have won, that he was robbed, that he should be upset with the decision. Because, like I said, it didn't really seem like he expressed that on stage or at the Olympia weekend itself. So what do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, next up in the news, we got a recent physique update from Blessing Awodibu. That's a guy that I feel like we haven't talked about in a very long time, and I feel like we haven't seen him compete in a very long time. I was thinking about this the other day. The Nick Walker versus Blessing Awodibu rivalry, that was like a really big talking point in the bodybuilding world for a while. And I was thinking about this yesterday, how that seems like it was so recent, the Blessing versus Nick thing. But then I realized that was 3 Olympias ago. That was almost 3 years ago. Nick's been out of the Olympia for 2 years already. And the whole, press conference thing where him and Nick are going back and forth at the press conference at that Olympia, and Nick says he's not worried about guys that are in the last call-out or second call-out or whatever it was, and that's kind of what ended up happening with Blessing. And then Nick ended up in the top 3. It's kind of crazy to think about the fact that that was almost 3 years ago now. It seems like it was yesterday, but this is Blessing, off-season update. He's working with Boss of Outlaw. Not entirely sure what his next show is going to be, but I thought it was interesting to see Blessing this heavy and this big, and just interesting to see him again in general because it's been so long. But I thought it was interesting to put this side by side with Samson Dauda because it really helps you appreciate the true freak factor of Samson. Samson at 325 pounds next to Blessing. So this is Samson's recent back update. I'm going to put Samson's on the right and Blessing's on the left. But I think it makes you appreciate Samson's size even more when you see the way Samson carries 325 pounds versus the way that Blessing carries 325 pounds. And I saw like a series of pictures of Blessing as well, where you can really see how he carries that weight in his face. And then if you look at those pictures and put them side by side with Samson at 325 pounds, it's totally different the way that Samson carries that size. The detail that you can see on Samson's physique, you don't really see a super puffy or bloated looking face. He's carrying that size really well, and that's what's so impressive about Samson, is he carries it well, and he never really sacrifices anything from his aesthetics or his midsection to do so. And I'm kind of curious if Blessing has sacrificed some aesthetics in pursuit of that size, because notice this update that he posted does not show what the front looks like. You can't see his midsection in this update. But I think anytime you get a physique update from a bodybuilder where they're over 300 pounds, especially in excess of 320, it's not something you see every day. It's very rare. And it's always, I feel like it's always a good talking point. And really, this is one of the few times, I think, probably in bodybuilding history, that you have multiple guys competing right now that are over 300 pounds that we can even compare their updates. How many times in bodybuilding history did we have multiple 320-pound bodybuilders at the same time? We can even put their updates side by side. That in and of itself is pretty incredible. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. The Blessing Awodibu, I guess you could call it kind of a comeback. How do you think he's going to do? Now, next up in the news, this weekend, Mike the Badass, a.k.a. Mike Sommerfeld, who appears to be next in line for the Classic Physique Olympia title after placing second to Chris Bumstead at this year's Olympia. He did a guest posing this weekend, and I wanted to shine some light on it because I felt like it was a really impressive posing routine. And I think every time that we see a classic physique guy or just an open guy, anybody in general that has a really good posing routine, I think we should showcase it. And I thought this was a really, really good posing routine. And this is the type of stuff that I think a lot of fans like to see and want to see in classic physique. So I think Mike is setting a pretty good standard for what classic physique is about. And again, we've kind of had this discussion about who is going to be the next in line, because on paper it is Mike, but that second place position has changed so much. Ramon, Terrence, Breon, now Mike. But everything that we're seeing from Mike so far, really impressive physique, even now that he's kind of in the off-season. I don't know if he's planning on doing the Arnold or not. But at this weekend's NPC Mid-America Winter Classic, I thought he did a really good job with this guest posing. I thought this was what classic physique is all about. Really impressive physique. And I hope we see him back on stage soon, and maybe we will, because even though he looks really big here, he still looks like he's in really good shape post-Olympia, and maybe we see him show up at the Arnold Classic and do some damage, which brings me to my next story. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but Wesley Vissers posted a YouTube video yesterday titled My Big Announcement, and at the very end of that video, the big announcement was he's planning on defending his Arnold Classic title at this upcoming Arnold Classic, which I think will be very, very interesting to see what happens there. Because obviously, this past year, Wesley was on quite the roll, winning the Arnold Classic US and then the Arnold Classic UK back-to-back. A lot of high hopes for him at the Olympia, but somehow something happened going into the Olympia because he dropped significantly from how he looked at the Arnold to how he looked at the Olympia, and he somehow managed to place worse than he placed at the Olympia the year prior. So we saw him kind of have a little bit of a fall off of the hype train there. And so depending on who else from Classic Physique ends up doing the Arnold, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to be able to successfully defend his title. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Wesley there at the Arnold. Can he defend his title and repeat and maintain or earn back, I guess, some of the momentum that he had going into this year's Olympia? Like I said, we don't know the lineup yet. I'm assuming it's coming out very soon. The deadline was December 1st, so that was 8 days ago. And if we got guys like Wesley announcing that they are officially doing it so they know they're on the list, we're probably going to see the Arnold Classic list come out, I would assume, any day now. But do you guys think that Wesley Vissers will be able to do a back-to-back Arnold Classic victory and successfully defend his title and win the 2025 Arnold Classic Physique Championship, even though we don't know who else is doing it, so it's kind of tough to predict, but still, do you think it's possible? And that brings me to the next story. We know very few guys that are doing the Arnold Classic. One of the guys that said he was doing the Arnold and should be able to get to the States is none other than Nathan Asha. We haven't been able to see Nathan at the Olympia for several years now, but he's done very, very well during the competitive season. He's racked up a ton of victories. He's proven he's still one of the best bodybuilders in the world. We just saw him at the Dubai Pro going head-to-head with Behruz Tabani, William Bonac. This is the latest physique update from him, and we would be now about 11 weeks out from the Arnold. And again, he says he's going to be able to get there. I don't know for sure if that's going to prove to be true or not, but I certainly hope he is able to. Like I've said many times, I truly believe that Nathan is one of the best bodybuilders in the world. He's proven that. And I want to see him go against more of the top guys than he's been able to up until this point. Because like I said, we haven't been able to see him on the biggest stage of them all in several years now. And the Arnold Classic is the next closest thing to that. And I think it's probably also that significant prize money of $500,000 for first that's attracting Nathan and probably a lot of other people to that show. But I hope he's able to get there. He says he is. That seems to be his plan. Do you guys think we're actually going to see him on the Arnold Classic stage? And I'm assuming we're probably going to see his name on that lineup as well when we do see the official Arnold invite list. Like I said, should be really any day now. And we also got a physique update from another guy doing that show, Andrew Jacked, one of the biggest names that we know is confirmed for the 2025 Arnold Classic. We got a series of training videos from him where you can see a little bit of his physique. He's really not the most revealing guy going into a show. We never really see a lot of physique updates from him. This is pretty much what's typical from Andrew, is like just a training video with a sleeveless shirt. But so far, I'd say Andrew is the next biggest name that we know doing the Arnold behind Samson Dauda. And I think really the biggest question with the Arnold Classic this year is there going to be anybody in this lineup that has the ability to stop Samson, a reigning Mr. Olympia champ? Could we have an upset at the Arnold? Could Andrew be that guy? Right now, I don't really think someone is going to be able to topple Samson Dauda. I've said before, the guy that we talked about in the beginning of this video, Hadi Choopan, I think he is Sampson's #1 rival. I think he's his biggest threat because of the conditioning. And we already know that Hadi will not be there. And I guess there is the chance that Nick Walker could do the Arnold. And because we haven't seen Nick and Sampson go head-to-head in a while, that could open the door to an upset if Nick is really bringing his A game and he's back to, 110%. That would be a huge upset. But honestly, I really feel like the only name that they could add to that Arnold Classic list to where I would say Sampson has a chance at being defeated here, it would really be Hadi Choopan. I mean, who else could they add to that list where you would say maybe Sampson could lose this? I mean, maybe Big Ramy kind of comes out of his retirement or whatever he's doing. That would be pretty cool. We certainly haven't seen Ramy in a while, and we don't really know how he would do in today's kind of climate of top guys. But I think Sampson will be a heavy, heavy favorite going into this Arnold. And right now, Andrew Jacked, I think, is the next closest to Sampson in terms of highest placings. And we did get a physique update from one guy that I'm a little bit surprised is not doing the Arnold Classic, but he's going to be doing several shows in 2025, I believe more than 3, including the most upcoming recent, the Detroit Pro, which will be shortly after the Arnold Classic, and that is Martin Fitzwater, looking really, really good after his Prague victory over Chris Bumstead. I have a feeling we're going to be talking a lot about Martin Fitzwater in 2025. He's planning on competing, being very active. That's what we like to see. He just had a really impressive outing at the Olympia, top 4 at his Olympia debut. He's kind of on top of the world right now, and I could imagine some of these shows that he's doing in 2025, I think he even lumped the Dubai Pro into that list. I think there's going to be some pretty impressive lineups, and with him being as good as he seems to be right now, if he does a bunch of these shows and potentially wins all of them, I feel like we're going to be talking a lot about him going into the Olympia for 2025 and potentially moving up and cracking that top 3. I really don't think that's out of his reach. I think that's a real possibility, and I think the momentum that he's probably going to build in 2025 is going to be impressive. But like I said, I am surprised he's not doing the Arnold. I think it would be really interesting to see him in that mix. And again, we don't really know what Derek is doing. We don't know who his new coach is going to be. Same with Hadi, but Derek hasn't really commented on what his plan is, if he's going to do the Arnold or not. I know that he doesn't have to. He's won the Olympia, so he's qualified. Probably the same reason that Hadi's not doing it. I think Hadi did it last year, or well, it was still this year, kind of just to cross it off his bucket list because it was something he hadn't done before and he wanted to win that title. Hadi didn't have to qualify, and Derek doesn't have to qualify for 2025. So I would assume he's not going to do the Arnold. He's probably going to go back to the drawing board, figure out his new coach, and try to just get back on track, man. I think Derek's sole focus will probably be the Olympia, but like I said, I would like to see Martin. I would like to see one of these top guys, aside from Andrew Jacked, in this Arnold mix to really give Sampson a run for his money. Because right now, it doesn't really seem like it's going to be a difficult show for a reigning Mr. Olympia to win with a complete absence of everybody else in the top 4. Now, next up in the news, I thought this was pretty interesting. This was a couple days ago, and it's not like major news or anything, but I thought it was an interesting talking point here. This clip is courtesy of the Underdog Talk podcast. I highly recommend you go check out the full interview with Olympia president Dan Solomon, but this little clip right here, Dan talks about the potential of bodybuilding / the Olympia going mainstream, specifically on network television. Now, this is something that's been teased before when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson got involved with the Olympia. There was talks about, I believe it was on CBS. There was talks about airing it on CBS. But let me play the clip for you guys really briefly right here, and then we'll talk about it.
I've had some conversations in recent months with people who attended this year's Olympia as my guest or are just watching it from afar. And these are people that are tied to network television, people that are tied to major brands that go far beyond I always say there's the endemic brands that pay attention to us. Endemic meaning sports supplementation, nutrition, apparel, equipment. Those are the brands that have long supported our industry. But we're starting to see it go well beyond that. And people are taking notice. They're talking to us about what we're doing with our production, how we're distributing our product, how we're connecting with fans, and we're seeing the interest that people are taking. And yeah, little by little, I think we're starting to get there.
So the Olympia being aired on mainstream TV, is this something that's possible? And this whole talk about bodybuilding going mainstream has been a very interesting topic. If you guys remember back to Athleticon, which seems like that's never going to happen, which was going to be The Rock's IFBB Pro show. That was like the best chance I felt that bodybuilding had at getting. So, like, what does mainstream mean? I think it means like big name sponsors like Under Armour, Gatorade, like something like that. So it would be appeal to big, massive mainstream sponsors. It would need a reach to a mainstream audience, which someone like The Rock has, and which mainstream TV would also have, network TV. So could I see the Olympia on network TV? I could, but what I wanted to talk about here is I'm hoping that they don't make the same mistake that World's Strongest Man makes, which I think is really the biggest issue with World's Strongest Man. Strongman does have a little bit more mainstream appeal than bodybuilding does. I think that's objectively true. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that it's aired on network TV. It's a big platform. It's much bigger than streaming, or at least the type of streaming that most bodybuilding shows do. But the problem with it is they don't air it live. They air it months after the fact. So you already know the result by the time that it's on TV, which a lot of strongman fans hate. And I think the main reason for that and why we might not see that issue with bodybuilding, I think they probably would air the Olympia live. Well, then again, maybe not. Because I think the main reason they do that with strongman is because there's multiple days of these events, and they kind of package it into a more digestible version of the show and air it later. Bodybuilding is definitely not as long as a strongman competition weekend at World's Strongest Man, but it is lengthy. It is multiple days. Some of the shows go for like 7 hours. There's a lot of categories. There's a lot of competitors, especially at the Olympia. I know a lot of people complain every year about the length of the Olympia. So that would be something I'd be interested in, is if they do have some kind of intent to air the Olympia on TV, would it be live? Because again, on a big major network like CBS or whatever, they probably don't have the space for a 7-hour broadcast of bodybuilding. It would probably need to be packaged, edited, and maybe aired as a 2-hour show or a 3-hour show later on. So that would be my main concern, is it going to be aired live or aired after the fact? Because I think that's one of the really annoying things about World's Strongest Man. And then World's Strongest Man also has like this thing where they don't like people talking about it on social media, about the results, before it airs on TV, because it kind of spoils the TV airing. Would we face something similar like that with bodybuilding? It's kind of an interesting conversation, and I wanted to talk about it in this video because I was curious what you guys thought, because that's the first thing that came to my mind is the whole World's Strongest Man fiasco with how they air that show. That would likely, bodybuilding could also have that issue because it is pretty lengthy and it is multiple days, and you're just not going to air on prime airspace a 7-hour bodybuilding show on a big network. And then I guess the other question too would be, maybe that would force them to condense the Olympia a little bit, or maybe limit the number of competitors. I don't know. Maybe they would have to shorten the show, expedite it. I don't know. It's an interesting conversation for sure, the potential of bodybuilding going mainstream, because I think that is one of the things that's preventing it, is the number of divisions, the number of competitors, the length of the show, the fact that it's multiple days. I think those are all pretty prohibitive to airing on something like CBS or ESPN, because they only have such limited blocks of space to air each sporting event. They're not gonna give you 7 hours on ESPN to the Olympia over multiple days. Although I would love to see that happen. And I also think that the mainstream opinion has shifted a lot on performance-enhancing drugs. I think a lot of that is due to the really prevalent use of TRT, just with so many just regular people now taking testosterone replacement. I feel like the attitude towards performance-enhancing drugs is not what it was 20, 30 years ago. I think it's a lot more accepted now, and I think that was probably the big thing that was prohibitive to bodybuilding being on TV, was like the obvious drug use. But maybe now people just don't care. I don't think the climate is the same, and I don't think the attitude is the same. And I don't think people would really care. Maybe sponsors, like really big sponsors, might care. But I don't know. I don't think it matters as much as it did back in the day. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And the final story that I've got for you guys today, I know this is getting pretty long. I think this is going to end up being like a half an hour long video, but I know I haven't posted in a few days. There hasn't been a whole lot going on, so I just wanted to kind of accumulate it into one video today. But the final story that I've got for you guys today, Seth Feroce reunites with Hany Rambod to do some training, to do some posing. Seth has been talking quite a bit about a potential comeback. He's been looking very impressive lately. His physique is really the best I think it's been in years. And Seth did specifically say that if he did make a comeback, he would like to reunite with Hany because Hany was his coach when he was actively competing back in the day, and they had a really good working relationship together, according to Seth. So it is kind of unfortunate that Hany has now announced his retirement. I mean, I don't know, because he is friends with Seth, I don't know if he'd be willing to come out of retirement to, do like a short prep with him. But I would love to see them team back up together. If Seth really does make a comeback, I would love to see him work with Hany again, but I don't know what the chances are of that happening. But it does seem like maybe there is a possibility just seeing them together in this video. I would love to see that team happen again. And I think if anybody can bring back Seth in the best possible shape to have a crazy comeback, I think it would be Hany Rambod, arguably the greatest coach of all time. Obviously retiring after Chris Bumstead coaching Chris for Prague, which Chris looked amazing at. But even aside from the fact that he's with Hany in this video and in these pictures, I think Seth looks really, really impressive, and I want to see him back on stage. I hope he does decide to do the comeback. I know it's been something that he's been very back and forth on over the years. There's been years where he said he'll never make a comeback. Then there's been years where he's hinted at it. And this seems like maybe the most serious he's considered a comeback. And this, to me, is like the most serious he's looked in a very long time. I would love to see this happen. And I would be curious to know, too, if it would be in 212 or if it would be in open bodybuilding. Because kind of another point that we were talking about earlier, how maybe the judging at the Olympia in open bodybuilding is moving away from so focused on conditioning. I've seen a lot of people also talk about maybe the judging standard is moving away from the shorter guys and moving more to a taller aesthetic physique like Samson Dauda. And Seth is definitely a shorter guy, so I don't know if he would do open or 212. But then again, that whole argument is kind of goes out the window, talking about moving away from shorter guys, because we just saw Martin Fitzwater beat Chris Bumstead, and Chris is like 5 or 6 inches taller than Martin. So I don't know if I fully buy the theory that they're moving away from the shorter, blockier physiques into a taller physique. I think I do kind of buy that they're moving away from conditioning being so important. I don't really buy that they're looking at taller physiques now more than shorter physiques, because you look at the rest of the top 4, they're all shorter guys. They just didn't win. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I know this is getting pretty long. It's damn near a podcast now. But I wanted to make sure I hit on everything that happened this past few days. And actually, if you guys enjoyed this longer style of video, make sure you like the video to let me know. If this gets more likes than a typical video or more views, maybe I'll try to make the videos longer in the future and not just shoot for 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe I'll do more 20, 30-minute videos. So if you made it this far and you made it to the end, make sure you like the video. And as always, subscribe, click the bell notification. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power, signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at NickStrengthPower. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.